All right, you guys ready? All right, let's do it. Hey everybody, how's everybody doing out there today? All right, sorry, that was the lamest bullshit I've ever heard in my entire life. How's everyone doing out there? Hell yeah, that is so much better. Thank you all so much for being here at California Lodging Investment Conference, CLIC 6. It's so great to be here. Now, the last time we were here at this very specific hotel, it was March 2020, and this was the last event that happened before COVID. And the only reason why I bring that up is not so we can feel bad about ourselves, but I really saw the COVID period as a time that accelerated all of the trends that were already existing in the market. And our connection to food and beverage, I think, is better than it has ever been. And hoteliers are in a position where they've been able to reinvent, and to refuel our guests in a great atmosphere over there. So let me introduce our panel over here. We got Mark Grissy right over there. Then we've got, I'm sorry, I need my glasses so I can read everybody's name and not screw anything up over here.
Thank you. Yeah.
Hey, sorry, I'm
ambassador
old.
for California.
What are you gonna do? I gotta tell you, this little headset thing is great. I love using one of these. I haven't used one of these things since I was a backup dancer on Janet Jackson's 1989 Rhythm Nation tour. So it's pretty good. All right, we got Mark Grissy, Azul Hospitality Group. Then at the far end, Jorge Lujan, he's a consultant restaurateur, has a great restaurant in town. Right next to him, Jeannie Muscolino with JCJ Architecture. Tom Bergenson, partner with AO, raise your hand. And then Nima Fazeli, he's a consultant in hotel development. What I'd like you all to do is just take 2 sentences and explain who you are and what the context of the conversation is going to be. Go for it.
Nima Fazeli, been in the real estate development world and hotels for quite some time, and excited to discuss F&B with everyone.
Excellent. Mark?
Mark Grissy, principal in Azul Hospitality Group, third-party management platform, roughly 50-plus hotels open, under construction, late-stage development.
Right. Excellent.
Tom Bergerson with AO, about 360 architects based in Orange, California, and we're just excited to be here and talk about how we can kind of energize your hotels with some nice F&B environments. So
great.
Thanks for having me.
Jean Muscolino, I'm the hospitality sector leader for JCJ Architecture, 150 professionals strong across 7 offices in the US. Our wheelhouse is really large-scale destination resorts. Love the F&B space. Excited to talk with you all about what you have going on in the industry.
Excellent. All right.
George Lujan, I'm with Table One Restaurant Management Consultants, independent restaurateur, and excited here to talk about food and beverage and bridging the gap between the independent market and the hotel market.
Great. All right. So if you guys have any questions out there, I'd love for you to raise your hand because we really want to make this as interactive as possible and for you all to take away as much as possible. For me, a successful panel is about actionable insights, and I hope to make sure that we give several of those today. So a lot of changes happening in the sphere of food and beverage. As I was saying earlier, one of the things that really frustrates me is that during the pandemic where people were like, food and beverage is over. In fact, the opposite is true. If we know human nature, food and beverage is the time that we all come together. It's the time that we form relationships. To me, it's really the essence of hospitality, right? So, Gina, what are you seeing right there, right now, as the low-hanging fruit in order to be able to reinvent what you're doing and start with a fresh F&B perspective?
I think one thing that we're seeing a lot in the marketplace is this entertainment concept. You know, we were talking about this a little bit earlier. It's a fun way to have an activity-based experience and combine that in with food and beverage. And that can be eating before, during, or after the activity. There's lots of different ways to do it, right? Between performing arts, music, sports, right? We've talked about that a little bit. And then, it can be as simple as doing dance lessons. Culinary arts lessons, right? And that would latch on to what we're seeing in the culinary arts market. People want to learn how to make food and do it together. So there are ways to really amp up the experience. Some of them large scale, like a bowling alley, like a punch bowl social. Some of them like a putt shack, right? So that urban mini golfing experience. But some of them are really small, simple ways to just amp it up and expand your market reach, right? The more unique you can make the experience, the farther people are going to be willing to drive, the farther they're going to be willing to travel, the longer they're going to stay. And you can charge a bit of a premium for your food and beverage in that way.
Right. I love that particular approach. So you're really combining a lot of different elements that used to be siloed, right? So you're breaking those down. Tom, how are you approaching that?
Well, we're just trying to see if we can add value to the hotel. So no matter what level of service the hotel is, just see if we can just amenitize that and monetize that for our developers, the hotel operators. Provide an environment where the client or the guest is coming to, just relax and just add something that's just one step above of what you would normally think at that level of service at the hotel. So we're doing many projects right now with rooftop bars and restaurants, pool lounges. We're incorporating, as Jeannie said, the sports-tainment, the eatertainment, that indoor-outdoor activity that kind of blends, especially in California where we have this great weather. So that's kind of a trend that we're really
pushing. That great weather yesterday was amazing. I couldn't get away from it. So, Mark, are there observations ringing true to you as a hotelier?
I think at the high level, yes. I'm going to take a step back, though, and maybe be a little bit of the contrarian, because we're the ones that actually have to operate them and make them profitable.
That's right.
And so the one thing that I will, as I was thinking about this panel this morning, I was saying, how was I going to approach this where the audience could, really take something away? And the thing that everybody has to remember is not every hotel is suitable for a food and beverage operation. That's number one. And so there's a lot of different, metrics and analysis that go into, what should I do here, if anything? How should I infuse food and beverages to this operation? And so, that could be a panel on its own, basically.
Right. Yeah.
But just that thought process has to be the first thing that you think about when you're thinking about adding a food and beverage component to any development. Once you get past that and say, okay, there's something suitable here, then it's, okay, what do I identify that as? Is it a rooftop execution? Is it a activated lobby bar? From our standpoint, just to give you guys some context, in our careers, or in the history of Azul, we've probably concepted internally between 25 and 30 different restaurant concepts.
Right.
So we feel like we have a pretty good understanding of what works in a hotel environment. And what we've now started to gravitate to is bars with food. Those are very, very profitable executions.
Right.
And so, but again, not to get too much in the weeds, but that's the real essence of, I think, what everybody should try and pull out in the next 45 minutes is, am I working on a development? Can I design it correctly where I could make it not only a profit center or maybe to offset something complementary, but also we're big believers that a good F&B or a good bar execution is a good driver of ADR at your hotel. And that's a big component of what you're going to do in F&B.
Right, and while, he makes 100% sense, and if you think about it, the beverage part of the food and beverage is the most highly profitable part of the hotel operations, and even though you might be running slimmer margins on that food, you really can't sell all of those drinks in the same meaningful way unless you have a full program out there. So, Nima, how are you approaching this particular issue and thinking about it?
Yeah, I think everyone's making some really good points, but I'm going to actually go slightly
to the contrarian
and kind of expand the way you're thinking about F&B. It doesn't have to be a sit down. It doesn't have to be a cocktail at a bar. I think especially talking to a group of owners largely, I think you need to start thinking about how you can monetize your real estate more over a longer period of the day. And I think by incorporating, like you see a lot of these ghost kitchen concepts, not to say those are the most profitable because they oftentimes aren't, but if you can find ways to monetize as a select service hotel, for example, your kitchen is only active in the morning. And in that morning, you're not really making money off of the free breakfast, obviously, because it's free and you probably bake it into the rate, but that's a different story. That kitchen is sitting idle for the rest of the day. So to be able to think outside of the box and provide that room service concept to your guests without allowing them, or hopefully not allowing them, to go to your Postmates and your DoorDashes and all those kind of groups, because then you're sending revenues that could be in-house out of house. So I think all these points are great. I just think there's if one thing COVID showed us was to be able to think outside the box and get a little more creative about how you monetize.
Right, and I think what we're really learning here right now is there's no one-size-fits-all solution, right? You can't just implement something that doesn't make sense for the type of property you have, such as you were saying, the location of the property and the physical structure of the building. George, what do you think of what all of these folks are saying?
I think they're on point. I mean, when you're taking a look at the project in food and beverages, you know, and once again, I'm on the independent side, so I'm not going to speak on the hotel side, but trying to, staying true to it and the concept of ghost kitchens. We've seen a lot of that, I think, during the lockdown and COVID. I think a lot of the brands did that, some successful, some didn't, weren't that successful with it. But the thing I can say, what we saw during that time is staying true to your brand, staying true to what you are. I think during the pandemic, we saw a lot of people got out there and took the shotgun approach and lost track of their identity. And when you lose track of your identity, you lose your customer's identity as well. And I think the key here is, as Mark is saying, everyone on this panel is, I like all the ideas, but we have to stay true to who we are and not try to do everything to everybody, but expand that enough we can, the revenues are there.
George, that could be a very difficult thing to do under time of extreme duress like we were through in COVID, right? People are looking for solutions to take care of today and not really thinking about tomorrow. So how were you able to keep such a clear focus during that time to make sure you stayed authentic to what you were trying to create?
We learned during that time who our real customers were. Okay, maybe before that you questioned it, but we learned what they wanted. We listened to them. I think that's the important thing, is the human factor. Too many times we look at this on an economic factor without bringing back in the human factor. So let's look at the human factor and listen to them. What do they want? What are they looking for? And at that point, we were lucky. We got through it successfully.
Right.
Take care. And I think that was what we learned from it, is to really listen to the public. And at times, we're all caught up in economics and we're caught up in numbers and don't look at the other side of it.
That's true. Jeeves, you want to say something?
It's interesting. A little while ago, we were talking about the end of the buffet.
Right.
Right. And that was so interesting, right? Because we were all sure it was going to go away. People weren't going to get in line again.
First of all, I was not sure it was going to go away.
I wasn't either.
Right. It just frustrates me. And this is one of the things that we learned in the COVID period, that everybody just kind of jumped on the lack of critical thinking bandwagon and refused to look at how we're created as human beings, right? So please continue.
Yeah, one thing that we have done successfully with former buffet spaces, and these were projects that were planned, but they were accelerated by COVID, is to take that buffet space and turn it into more of a food market scenario, right? It can be really efficient. You've got a single central kitchen, and then you can almost have different specialty experiences. So from the guest perspective, they have a lot of different options to choose from, 5 or 6. With the labor issues that we've been having, we've been able to shut down 1 or 2 and have the other 3 operable.
Right.
You can have a grab and go that's happening 24/7 if you need to. So there are ways to introduce some flexibility, but it's interesting to go to Vegas and see those lines.
Absolutely. And I feel we're going to be talking a lot about what's going on in Vegas, but I want to talk about the sports entertainment a little more in detail, what you just said, but I do want to address the ghost kitchen issue for a second. How many of you have heard of ghost kitchens out there? How many of you think that's a good idea that's out there? So people still aren't on board with that. But I got to tell you, I think it's a great idea. Graduate Hotels is doing a ghost kitchen concept. They're a great brand that's near college campuses. And one of the things that they're doing is they're creating it not only for people within the hotel, but so they can appeal to the folks that are on campus as well by bringing together an umbrella of brands. And what I like about it, and you can speak a little bit more on it, is like, I want sushi, my kid wants chicken fingers, my spouse wants a salad, and we could get it from 3 different brands we're comfortable, and it all arrives together, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, there's different facets to the ghost kitchen world. Ghost kitchens in and of themselves, if you're the tenant of a larger ghost kitchen, are not going to be profitable, because by the time you provide the food, you have 35% labor, you have 30% to the third-party delivery app, you have 28% COGS, you have 8% occupancy costs, you have about a 3% margin to play with, and you're probably going to end up upside down.
Right.
So from that angle, probably not going to work. But to your point, if you have it's all about scalability. So if you have that scalable platform, like a Graduate, like a whoever, and you can create that anything for everyone option so that you can have sushi and your wife can have whatever and your kids can have a burger, and then that thing starts to come together in a whole nother way, and it helps you because you're able to cross-utilize ingredients, cross-utilize labor, monetize that space over a longer period of time, et cetera, and then your guest also is very happy with the outcome.
Can I give you a different take on a ghost kitchen?
Please.
So,
Mr. Contrarian, I love it.
not contrarian, but I agree with the concepts here. But you just made a good point that if you do a true ghost kitchen, then they're a tenant, and that can provide challenges in its own right. We had a situation with one of our campuses hotels, and I thought we handled this very creatively, where we've all been frustrated when pizza companies come and paper your property with their flyers and everything else. But what we realized, taking a step back, was the mix at this particular campus looked at that as being valuable. Like they felt like, hey, if they were going to order something from the hotel, they were going to pay double the price, they were going to get less of a product. So what we in effect did is we created our own internal pizza company. That was not so, and we called it something different. We put out our own flyers, and that number would just dial to our back kitchen.
Freaking love it.
We had a different package, and then interestingly enough, even when it was delivered, the local, or the on-campus, employee that was delivering would put on their Coast Pizza jacket and deliver it to the room. And so we were able to kind of get double the benefit. The guests felt like they were getting a good value. It kind of gave the appearance of kind of an internal ghost kitchen, and it was just a creative way to capitalize on that type of concept, but keep the revenue in-house.
Right, and you were also talking about hotels that might not be suitable to have some sort of operation in-house. Interesting story that my No Vacancy Live podcast partner, Anthony Melchiori, was telling me. He was a general manager of the Lucerne on the Upper West Side in New York City a couple of decades ago. And they weren't able to offer room service, but there was a diner right down the block that had incredible food, and they worked out a deal with that diner down the block to deliver. They did the phone thing, someone would call, it would seem like it was room service in this particular case. They would go, but it would go straight to the restaurant. They'd bring it over, they had a tiny little closet. Then the guy who brought it over would put on that jacket and bring it up as if it was room service. And they avoided the whole problem of having to have that operation in-house while still being able to satisfy their guests. And it worked out really well for them. So you can look at this issue on both sides of it, right?
Absolutely.
So, Gina, I want to go back to the Las Vegas market for a second, and that the food hall concept that you're talking about, and transitioning from buffets to food halls. And I see this as a great opportunity for a lot of properties out there. I think the first major food hall that I saw that really has been reinventing stuff outside Italy was over at Resorts World, where they've done a tremendous job. They found folks that have great food in like the Singapore food markets on the streets, and they brought them over. If you haven't had the Google Man's noodles, I highly recommend you get those over at Resorts World. But now a lot of the casinos, I think Aria just closed their buffet, and they're turning it into a food hall as well, but it's almost kind of like the same exact thing as a buffet, because companies like Caesars are already going away from troughs of food to individual portions anyway. So it's kind of like a new spin and an old design that kind of keeps you forward with the consumer consciousness, right?
Yeah, and from the consumer perspective, it's just, you can tap into that desire to have either heavily localized menu options or menu options from across the globe, right? And it's an easy way to achieve that mix in a way that's really flexible. If it's not working, change it out. And the food market that we worked on recently was Gordon Ramsay's first. And he required that we build in just flexibility in the branding, right? So we could easily pop out and rebrand any of the sections that we have for him. And it's a testing ground, right? It's a playground and it's fun. And it allows him to have some flexibility to see what's working and what's not.
Right. Tom, I want to go back to the sports, the entertainment kind of a thing that's out there. In Las Vegas, of course, they're doing it absolutely exceptionally. The first one to really focus on this was Mayfair at the Bellagio, the whole return of the notion of the supper club, proving that everything old is new again. And then it was taken to the next generation of it, Delilah's over at Wynn, which is absolutely fantastic. It's one of the most incredible rooms that I've ever seen. The president of Wynn told me how much it cost. My mouth dropped on that, but it really looks like the 1920s Gilded Age and you walking into a different universe. So creating a sense of place is also essential before you even have that entertainment, right? So how do you think those through in order to create something that's architecturally and design cohesive that pairs well with whatever the entertainment and the food concepts are going to be?
Right, and I think to add to what George was saying is just to be true to yourself and make sure that that market is right, that hotel is placed in the right position, that you want to really do something that fits. You're not trying to do something that's contrived.
Right.
But what we're seeing is the hotels and our operators are looking for something that's infusing the two together so
Right.
that you have the ability to have a casual meal while you're playing pickleball, or you're adjacent to a surf park or something that has different F&B venues that you can go, again, from just a casual, quick chicken fingers and fries all the way up to a white tablecloth meal that's overlooking something that's going on. So we're seeing this more and more. We're master planning a site down in Palm Desert that the whole theme is the health, wellness, and sportstainment, eatertainment.
Right.
And they're, in our specific plan, we're encouraging all of those operators to have something incorporated with their hotels that's inducing that activity right out of your hotel. You step out and you're playing some type of sport, and you can step back in and have something to eat or watch the sports happen. So it's been exciting kind of a venue that's going on.
Right, Nima, then we'll go to Gene.
Yeah, I think where you're going with it is the design versus the food,
Right.
and the food offering. And
Trying to create something cohesive, right?
And I think that lifestyle segment of, well, everything across hospitality, but food and beverage in particular, has kind of expanded. It used to be kind of in this 4-star, 5-star space when W came out and SLS Hotel, et cetera, back in the day, and it's kind of expanded this way where the term lifestyle has become very...
it's meaningless to me.
It can be anything. It can be, it's
Yeah.
a very gray area where it can mean what you want it to be, but to answer your question, I think 9 times out of 10, someone would rather go, especially with social media
Right.
and everything, they'd rather go to a really cool place with subpar food, because then they get to at least take a picture and post it and whatever that goes down, that road, as opposed to a really great food with, not a great ambiance environment, which I love, because usually that means the food's really good, but you usually get the other side of it. So I think 9 times out of 10, developers, owners, whatever, will go with the design heavy piece and try and make up for lack of food offering or lack of quality of food, as opposed to the other way around.
That's interesting, because for me, I could see that would work the first time, but I wouldn't necessarily go back. If the ambiance is great, but the rest of the experience isn't of the upscale nature that the design is reflecting, then it's all kind of over.
Take Nusret, the Salt Bay guy. He does insane money. It's one of the worst meals I've ever had in my life.
Right.
I'll never go back there again. But every time you go there, people are just taking pictures and social media, because you just go there to post because it's the cool thing to do.
Yeah, it's so bizarre. Let me just go to George real quick. How do you balance that sort of a thing to meet the needs of today's younger person that are obsessed with that social media aspect, but still delivering high quality food that's going to get people to want to spend more money with you over an extended period of time?
Good question. I mean, we're presently looking at the same thing. I have an older brand. Sorry, I have an older brand that's a little. We're trying to reinvent, and I think what we're speaking here on this, what I'm hearing here is lifestyle is changing. People are changing. They want entertainment, as we've seen.
Right.
So we're sort of in that same category.
Hi, how are
looking
you?
at
Good
how
to
do
see
we
you. Thank you
pivot
for being
without going too far.
Yes.
How do you make it small
Do me a
adjustments?
favor and check in with the
Drastic
intern.
adjustments.
Interns
I
will get
think
a
are
badge.
problematic. So that's what we're doing. We're looking at it in a bigger picture in our demographic and our market and say, what's there? What does this area need? We're in a younger demographic group where I'm at, so bringing in the families, I think.
Did you get the light
We
figured
see a
out?
lot of that down. If you look, one of the big trends where we are in the beach communities, the old days of the You know, the horrible food stand on the beach has turned around to the gourmet food stands.
Yep.
Up and down Huntington Beach, the county had all those properties locally, and so I think that's what we're looking at is taking a look at what's in the marketplace and going from there.
Yeah, one of the problems that I see out there is when you're talking about that upgraded food, it's not necessarily upgraded. It's kind of like the whole notion of luxury apartments. They're just trying to charge you more for something that's subpar. But Mark?
I'm going to continue on this notion, but I want to bring it back to a level that I think many people in the room it'll relate with a little bit more, because we're talking about big, grandiose projects, right?
Yep.
And a lot of times what I found in these conferences, it's great to talk about those, but 90% of the projects that are being done here are select service or upgraded select service. And so a lot of these concepts where we've found some success is pushing the brands on allowing us to be creative on their prescriptive offerings. So like, give you an example, we just opened up a Courtyard in Santa Barbara, and rather than Marriott enforcing the bistro concept, they allowed us to basically micro-brand our own concept that took the place of the bistro.
Really?
Yeah, and so what it did was it allowed us to do, I think, a little bit of a better F&B offering in our opinion, but something that was more suitable for the brand. So as you guys are out looking at acquisitions, developments, the point I'm making is don't look at the brand offering F&B as long as there's support to do something different. You can still drive value, still create value, still do something a little different if the brand is willing to let your operator and the developer push that. And it doesn't have to be in a grandiose project.
I get it. So let me ask you this, because you got me thinking about this particular topic. I think the major brands want to have that rigidity and stuff, because hospitality executives aren't necessarily known to be food and beverage masterminds, right? The perception in our industry has been so long that it's a lost leader, and you kind of have to have it, and we're going to deal with it. But what you're saying is, if you want to be freed from those constraints, it's probably a better idea to have something that's really reflective of your neighborhood and whatever you feel your team could create. That'll connect better with the guest over the long term, right?
And we don't want to lose money on anything. We don't want to lose money on any aspect. So if we can take something and take it from a loss to a profit, even if it's a nominal profit, that's a win. If we can take something that, again, this is a little bit brand generated, but if you're looking at a brand that's a complementary offering and kind of look at that a little differently and just turn that into a break even or a small profit, that's a huge swing on the bottom line. So everything that we look at, whether it's a select service with a little bit of a lifestyle feel to it, or a resort, it's all gets down to, I don't want to lose money in any department that we're working on. So
Nima, how do you get out of that trap of it being a loss leader as opposed to a profit center for you?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of these brands are actually, first of all, I mean, Kimpton has been doing this for a long time. So I don't think it's anything
many
revolutionary. I just think the Hyatts, the Marriotts, the Hiltons have jumped on the bandwagon with the evolution of the soft brand, which has given owners and developers a lot more flexibility.
Absolutely.
With the acquisition of Viceroy and Dream and all these other groups like SBE by Accor, like this is happening, and instead of trying to create it like you guys have been able to do very well, a lot of these big corporate companies are just want a plug and play solution for that. So I mean, look, F&B is never gonna, like, nobody's gonna get loaded by being a restaurateur. Like, F&B isn't where the margins are.
No, but they might with all that booze that they have.
Banquets and catering maybe, but not in a typical restaurant. That's not like going to be your home run. It's more about the experience and how you can obviously provide what you need, especially within a hotel. It becomes the amenity. But just one more point I really wanted to quickly to make, and I was thinking about when George was talking, was it's kind of become this interest, because I was saying how food doesn't matter as much, but now that I think about it, the Yelps of the world are actually keeping people very accountable. So it's like this constant push and pull between the Yelps and the Instagrams, and like, where do you draw the line? Because they're both keeping people accountable in different ways. So it's just something interesting there.
They are. But one of the things that frustrates me about Yelp is that everybody thinks that they're a food critic. I think all of us in this room are very fortunate that we've had a large panoply of food and beverage experience, and our points of view might be different than the person who is, this always makes me so sad, waiting online to get into the Olive Garden when they're in Times Square at New York, right? They're thinking about it a little bit differently, right? So sometimes you've got to think it through to appeal to all groups, and you're going to get, slapped with some Yelp stuff that may not make any sense.
Well, it's a great point, and I think it goes to, you have to look at every hotel, every asset, every market from a food and beverage perspective and say, okay, what am I trying to accomplish here? So you may have a really cool rooftop execution where you're, catering towards, a couple of demographics,
right,
versus you may have a different execution. Like we use a term in our world where we're looking at something that might have a little bit more of a family mix, where it's family cool, right? So where you can come, your kids, whatever age they are, can be engaged, but mom and dad are very comfortable sitting around,
right,
drinking a bucket of craft cocktails or whatever it would be. So there's not one size fits all if you're willing to kind of push the envelope on creativity a bit,
Yeah, I love that idea about engaging the families and stuff like that. So many people have those young kids. I remember I lived in Parksville, Brooklyn for a lot of years. We had this really cool pizza restaurant. It was more of an elevated type of experience, but to make families happy, they let kids play with the pizza dough and kind of make their own pizzas that they would cook and did that whole sort of thing. So mom and dad could have their cocktails and not have to worry for a few minutes.
Yeah, let's face it, who doesn't want to get drunk if your kids are safe, right? Like everybody kind of needs that. So that's
right.
What you want to do.
Wisest word spoken at CLIC 6. I'd love to see if you guys have any questions out there, but while you're figuring that out, Gus, I'll get to you in 1 second. I did want to talk about one issue out there, physical menu design. It's really been bothering me a lot, and I don't see anybody talking about this. During COVID, a lot of restaurants forced us to use QR codes to look at it on their phone, but then they would take a picture of their menu in PDF format, and it had no cohesion, no rhyme, no reason. And plus, without these things, I can't really see those menus anymore. Why aren't more hotels and restaurants focused on creating that QR code that has great images of the food that's really designed for that particular medium? How do we get out of that trap? And I think, Gene, it would probably make people buy more stuff.
You'd think, right?
Yeah.
And I think the other thing that's key here is really that trend toward wellness and folks wanting to know the story behind the food that they're eating, right? They want to know the story of the farm where the food was sourced from. And, if you really do that and you do that in a thorough way, you've got a menu this thick, right? So I think the QR codes in a way are helpful because it can provide that story and that background. But you're right, I feel like that tangible branding piece is invaluable, and we really do need to start our focus back on that.
Yeah, George?
We had this discussion when the pandemic hit about using QR codes, and I'm going to go back to my comment earlier about the human factor. When you're going out to eat and you're spending time in dining, what are we doing? We're out there to enjoy, we're out there to converse. And what I found in watching and analyzing is we are now putting the phone back into the hand of the individual, and you watch and no one's talking anymore. So to the point, it's a double-edged sword. Sure, the data is phenomenal. Talking about Vegas, I saw one day a wine list that was in a laptop, and you could sit there for hours going through it. And now you're looking, what's my turn time? How long am I losing? How long does it take the person who's not that versed on a cell phone to try to get a QR code to understand it? What are we losing and what are we benefiting? So we sort of walked away from. So it's a great point for data and information, and that goes to another point about technology. Where do we draw that line?
Yeah, Mark?
Too much technology.
I'll give everybody one piece of advice. So if you open up an F&B concept, what we do is we tend to evaluate our menu and kind of rotate our options. Do not print your menu on 8.5 by 11 paper. Print it on 11 by 17. Bigger font. It creates a better experience. We just had this. We just opened up 2 really cool hotels in Salt Lake City, and so I'm not a QR code fan. I'm just not. I understand the need for it with saving paper and everything else, but but there's. This is an experiential sort of effort here. So if you are going to rotate your menu items, you are going to rotate your wine list, those types of things. You can do it on good quality, legal size paper. You won't see people squinting. It just and to George's comment. You don't want people looking at your phones. You want the activity level. You want people interacting. That's what creates the energy in your F&B venue. So
it's true, and it's the whole notion of looking at your phone is antithetical to the social situation that you're trying to create out there. So all those points make sense. Gus, let's hear what you had to say. Yeah, do we have a mic for him? Here he comes. Yeah, here you go. All right. All right, let's give him a shot. All right, Gus, what you got?
Thank you very much for the panelists. My question is, many hotels now are using outside restaurant like the Four Seasons on Richard Boulevard. They have that. Who is responsible and who's managing the restaurant? Is the chef or the owner of the paying rent, or the management company like Four Seasons?
Anyone? Mark, you look like one.
Yeah, I think it's a great question. I think every situation's a little bit different. You know, there's been a big push with celebrity chefs and that, you know, that type of concept. Again, it goes back to a market. So in Beverly Hills, it's going to be a little bit of a different analysis than, say, Carlsbad, California, right? But from an operator standpoint, if we find a situation where there's good synergy between a tenant, what we tell our owners is we're agnostic. So if our owner wants to go that route, what we basically try to make sure that we've got coverage on is that the interaction between the hotel guest and the restaurant execution is seamless regardless of who's managing or operating the restaurant. So that's the common denominator that you look for. But to answer your question, guys, it really is situation by situation. Sometimes it can depend on the positioning of the facility as it relates to, you know, street frontage, as it relates to, you know, kind of where it sits in the hotel. So there's really not one formula, other than you have to be on the same page. If a guest is coming in and spending $800 a night, you want to make sure that they can get a table at the restaurant, or that's going to reflect poorly on the hotel, because the guests don't know who's operating the restaurant. You know, they just don't go down to that granular, you know, level. So, Gus, I hope that answered your question, but I'm not sure if I completely did. But that's kind of how we look at that.
You make a really good point with working with outside partners, for example. I think one group that's doing an exceptional job right now is Jose Andres Group. They've got partnerships with multiple brands and companies. For example, I did a live show from the Ritz-Carlton in New York, where they've got one restaurant open. The second one is about to open, and that place was packed at 4 in the afternoon. You couldn't get a table unless you're a hotel guest. Then you could get that access to there. They've also partnered in LA. They're at the Conrad, for example, and they're at the Waldorf Astoria now in Washington, D.C. So working with a great partner like that can help elevate the entire experience for the customer, bring in that outside guest that's really essential to that profitability line, while if you don't have the confidence to run your F&B operation, that could serve as that as well.
There's also one other way to come at it, where we've done in certain properties, where you could work out almost like a menu consulting arrangement with a very high profile chef. So it's kind of a way to get the name recognition and get, you know, some of the cachet, but still have the execution. And that, you know, there has to be confidence on both sides or something like that. So there's a couple different ways to kind of skin the cat.
Right. So Gene, let me tee up what you're gonna probably say at this point. When we were talking ahead of time, you were talking about celebrity chefs and how they're still there. But I've been coming at it like I almost feel like for the most part, we're in a post-celebrity chef era, because the Food Network has done such a great job over the last 20 plus years getting people engaged in food, and those celebrity chefs acted as a great gateway to educate people and get people up to a new level. Now I don't think you need that name as much, but it can be used strategically to your advantage. How do you see it?
The chefs have become, it's less about the person, they're brands, right? And as any business, as any brand, Gordon Ramsay, for example, they want to grow. They want to find partners in key destinations. And they've gotten to a point where I think Gordon has 60 restaurants internationally. Mm-hmm. They'll work with you to find that right fit. It's not all about fine dining, right? They have grab and go, they have street food, they have fast casual. So I think there's a lot more flexibility built in. They're getting a lot smarter about how to grow their markets and how to grow their brands. And it's all about partnership. It's all about growth for both parties.
Right.
I'm going to be contrarian.
Yeah, good.
Shockingly. I actually wouldn't say that we're in a post-celebrity chef world. I would say that the definition of a celebrity chef has just expanded massively.
So what does that mean to you then?
Because you have Top Chef, you have Iron Chef, you have all these different shows. So it's not like Marco Pierre White of the old days or a Gordon Ramsay or a Jean George.
It could be the person who placed 5th on the Top Chef
or
season
first.
57.
That person who was first on season 4 of Top Chef is enough to get them the notoriety they need, because it still comes back to being experiential and lifestyle and all that kind of stuff. So it's just the definition of what makes you a celebrity chef has expanded a lot with just where we're at with Netflix and all these different types
Mark,
of
what
shows.
about the notion of creating a personality from within your organization to serve that purpose?
Yeah, I mean, that goes back to, do you have the firepower within your organization on the F&B side to come up with the right concepts? And it's a great question. So, you know, I tell people all the time, you know, I'm just blessed to have such a strong operating group with really high F&B pedigree. So when they go and we look at a rooftop execution, or you know what we're doing in a lobby bar execution, they go look at the market, they try and find maybe what's missing or what's in the market, and they come up with a connection. We're very big on connecting to the local community. I'd say we do a lot of rooftop executions. Our average rooftop probably does 60% local business. So all of that is very, very important to answer your question, Glenn, of finding the right DNA to, you know, maximize what you're trying to maximize there. So we're big, that's the route I would go first. Whenever we've evaluated, and this is probably a little bit of the older model of the celebrity chef, whenever we analyzed like the real deal, when you got down to crunching the numbers on the celebrity chef execution, we were so much farther ahead revenue and profit wise, just doing the concept ourselves. Now I know that's changed a little bit because they've evolved, but that's the key. Like if you really are always bringing it down to what's the healthiest route from a profitability and value standpoint, you typically kind of find the right answer.
So I think what we're really talking about here is celebrity chefs can be a valuable tool under specific circumstances, but also if you're going from a different type of angle, that might not be necessary if the location and the design and the menu quality works, and then you could have that chef that could be the de facto personality.
And one other thing I'll add to it, so this is more in like the soft brand or independent space, but we always micro brand. So we take a huge approach, and I know you guys will talk about this, the branding effort. So there might be a separate branding effort to the hotel name, then there could be a completely different branding effort to whatever concept you're coming on the F&B or the rooftop. I've really sort of found religion on spending the money up front to define that branding and define your niche, and 10 times out of 10 it's really, really worked very well. So.
Right, excellent. So the time keeps going down. So quickly to wrap up, tell me one meal you've had, each of you, not at a place that you owned, designed, or operated, that made a real impression on you in the last year, and why. George? Nima? You want me to start it off? I'll start it off. No, Jeannie, you go.
We were just talking about Delilah's, and you can't beat it, right? That old supper club, opulent experience, the performance that's tied in, the rhythm of the experience. I mean, it's amazing. So for those of you who have not been to Delilah's, I think there's one in LA and Vegas. Mayfair is another fabulous experience.
Yeah, for sure. Tom?
First thing that comes to mind is either Puesto or North Italia. It's just you're looking for just a good simple meal. You know what you're going to get, but the experience when you get in there, just a live vibe and the activity that's going on, a unique way of experiencing that fine dining experience. So I would say Puesto or North Italia.
Cool. Mark?
I'm drawing a blank on the name of it, but I had a great meal. I didn't put it together, and I was about 4 bourbons in, but it was a place in LA, and I'll come back to you with the name, but it was probably one of the best meals I've had in 3 years, and it was a pasta. God. But anyway, I'm just being honest. I'm just being honest. I'll get you the name.
Let's all meet there after.
I mean, you can always say some high check average place where it's going to knock it out of the park, but probably one of the go-to places is an Italian restaurant in Venice called Ospi, and they do great food. It never disappoints. It's not going to break the bank. You don't have to go there on an anniversary or something, but it's always really good and consistent, which is a big part of it.
Awesome. George, you figure it out?
You know what? I'm going to go with Italy in New York because of the dynamics.
Yeah.
It's the type of place, if nothing else, if you want to go fine, you can go fine dining. If you want to go simplicity, if you want to people watch. the energy, I think, is represented there that I haven't seen anywhere else. And you want to sit there all day long and just watch what people are doing, and you want to try everything.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I'll wrap up by saying my favorite dining experience over the last year was so absolutely incredible. Yeah, the Lila was fantastic, and I had a lot of other fantastic meals this past year, but I got to go to the Chotwell Lodge, which is owned by Dream Hotels, which has just been acquired by Hyatt, and it portends to me the next big trend that's happening out there, this whole outdoor space. And it's a lodge, so we got our own cabins. But then in the main house was where everybody came together to eat and drink. And believe it or not, it was an all-inclusive type property. Now, it was all-inclusive in the terms of $1,500, $2,000 a night per person type of all-inclusive. But they had all the food and beverage is included. Even Johnny Walker Blue is included at this. And you can have anything you want. And the food is prepared by a chef who was a Michelin-starred chef, but decided that he didn't want to chase that anymore, and is now creating the most incredible food and beverage in this lodge experience that really takes you by surprise. So for me, I didn't expect it. And then to be blown away by something that was literally the best food I had had in definitely since before the pandemic was something really special, and we haven't stopped talking about it. Anthony and I talk about this place all the time because it connected with us emotionally in a real way. And I think that's what you have to do with all of your guests out there, to win them back, to keep them coming over and over and over again. It's a matter of doing what all of these folks said, utilizing technology in a smart way, understanding who your core audience is, and being able to focus on them with great ambiance, food, drinks, and to create a social experience so we could all get back to being with one another and not separated like we were over the last 3 years or so. The future is bright for food and beverage, and you guys are all going to rock it out because of these folks up here. Let's hear it for them. What a great panel. And thank you so much, and let's bring it back to